as good as you.
All right. And we are live.
What?
Today we're going to talk about something other than Alec Baldwin.
What?
We'll talk about a world-renowned, reviled, notorious, famous, pick your term. Was it the Reverend Moon?
No. Sun Young Moon.
Sun Young Moon, sorry.
Sun Young Moon. And he had one wife who was either 17 years old and bore him 13 children, or was 13 and born him 17 children. But there was the stepson, as you're well aware, Half Moon. Must be a delay in humor there. There's a time delay.
Yeah, it must be. No, is he the one who is posing in the camouflage with the AR in all the later photos?
I don't know. I mean, the guy's had such a long career, Moon. It spans like 40 years. I mean, he's not David Koresh. He's not Jim Jones. This is a mega cult leader, not a guy on the balls of his ass in a house in Utah. I mean, this guy is up there in the pantheon of cult leaders, Eric.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's like Jim Jones. Well, actually bigger.
No, I mean, Jim Jones had 700 black people in the jungle. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't really compare to these other cult leaders. This guy is international and mega. I mean, he's Sun Young Moon, Eric.
True. And
True.
I guess I grew up with the Moonies and the flowers at the airports. And that's
right. Well, don't forget that. I mean, there's Rajneesh out of Oregon and the East Coast, but again, doesn't come close to touching the mega levels of Reverend Moon. None of these cults compares to Reverend Moon. And we'll explain why as we go on. The audience will see how Moon is, in my estimation, the greatest cult leader of all cult leaders in the history of cult leaders of cults.
Awesome. So get us started.
Okay. So I want to take you back. Nixon's president, early 70s, mid 70s. I go to this place, Bard College. It's all wealthy people who are fuck ups who can't get into Ivy League schools. I got a scholarship. That's why I went. My father was a grease monkey. I had nothing to do with these people. But the ratio of women to men was 3-1. And it was a small school of 600 people. Yeah, there's some of us right there. There's a few of us right there. That dog, by the way, was called Sunflower, and he ate on the break. He found a kilo of marijuana, ate the whole thing, and went insane. That dog on the left. Just a little side note. But nevertheless, this was Stone Row of Bard College and all this Ivy and stuff like that. I lived in a place called Ward Manor, which was owned by John Jacob Astor, and he donated to the school. It was something out of Batman. One of the craziest mansions of all time. This was just a row of dormitories here called Stone Row, but that was kind of my crew in the background there. But that being said, the school there's an old photo of, that's actually where I lived. That was from the 1920s, but that's the same mansion. And they gave me my dorm room. I almost shit. That it had a terrace and bay windows facing the Hudson River. I thought I died and went to heaven. And a guy showed up, knocked on the door. He was about 60 years old, wearing a limousine driver's outfit, like out of Sunset Boulevard with a Foot Locker. And he said, "Where shall I put Master Turner's belongings?" And I said, "I don't care, but they're not coming in here." So I had my own room in there in Ward Manor, which was like Batman's place or something, you know.
Ooh la la. Sent me another piece that is the entry to it. Show this because it's kind of interesting. Yeah, that was from the 20s, but that was exactly the way it was in the 70s. That's the
foyer when you came into the mansion, into the dorm room, the dorm of Ward Manor, and the chairs were even the same. Everything was the same, and the woodwork was incredible. It was owned by John Jacob Astor, who later, of course, Waldorf Astoria fame, and was the most famous fur trader going back until the 1800s.
Looks like a dump.
This room. Yeah, it's a total dump. This room, this is right on the ground floor. Those windows looked out onto the Hudson River. This is about 100 miles north of New York, in a town called Annandale on the Hudson. And Walter Winchell in the 1950s called Bard College the Little Red Whorehouse on the Hudson, because it was not only a whorehouse, but it was communist on top of it. So I went in half knowing what was going on, and had the first day I was there, I ended up with a girl in a bubble bath, and the rest is history. But I took that room and turned it into a Monte Carlo night the first year I was there, and I brought in wheels and dice and gambling and everything. And New York State said we couldn't give out cash prizes, so I gave away. Yeah, this is for when I produced Monte Carlo night at the school, and that's the dean of students, Mary Sugart, and a student named Amy Cohen. Anyway, so they said we couldn't give away cash prizes, so we gave away a giant meteorite of Lebanese hash, a bag of cocaine, and a kilo of weed, and some liquor, because you could have a gambling night, you just couldn't give away money. So
and the administration had no problem with that. She was cool with that.
She's the dean of students. She was right there trying to win the prizes. She was in on it. But,
oh, good Lord.
That being said, I just wanted to lay this down because Reverend Moon and his group didn't really exist on the media radar at that time. So there was no reference point to Reverend Moon. And this is a picture of me. This is a couple of years later, actually, when I started Sonora House, the Art Center, which we're going to do an episode on, across the river in the Catskill Mountains. That's the recording studio we opened in an old Catskill summer hotel, which will be a separate episode about Sonora House. That was opening night, but this was a couple of years later, so the photo is kind of accurate. The school itself bordered on the land of a Christian Brothers training school, which was an old mansion. They're all old mansions up there because it's the Hudson River Valley, and it's just strewn with mansions up and down the river. So this other mansion, which was the Christian Brothers training school, they sold it unbeknownst to anyone to Reverend Moon and the Unification Church, and they used it as a training school for them. So we were in a house across the road from this school in Barrytown, which is the next little town. Yeah, this is an overhead. You can see this thing is huge. Mm-hmm. And yeah, right across the road, we were in a band house, and we would hang out there. And in the middle of the night, we would see all this crazy crap, like naked people running in the rain, being tackled and dragged back. And we were stoned, just looking out the window going, yeah, what the hell's going on over there? And a kid put his head on the railroad tracks and killed himself one night. And just all kinds of crazy hijinks were going on in there. And the word started to spread that there was a cult in there, and people were kind of spooked. So the church reached out to the student body and said, we'd like to invite you onto the grounds for a picnic day, like an introduction to the Unification Church Day or something. Now, the week before, we had peered through the gates and had seen about 50 people in a row in a straight line, Eric, holding sticks in their hands like this, sticks. And they walked in a straight line, knelt down, and put one stick in a pre-dug hole, and then shoveled it over with dirt. And this was like 50 people across. And we were like, yeah, what the hell is this? And they were walking like zombies. So we were freaked. We were totally freaked. So anyway, they invite us onto the grounds, and they have like a buddy system, like they wouldn't leave you alone. They had 2 monitors for each student, and they took you around the grounds. They wouldn't let you get out of their sight. And, we went around with them, and they're trying to sell us on the church and this and that. And it was just really creepy.
Well, it is a Korean church.
Right, but not all of them were Korean.
But
not all of them.
that's some North Korean tactics there, my friend.
No, dude, absolutely. It was bookending. It was sensory deprivation. I learned that they really didn't give you food or water. They never let you sleep. You got like 3 hours a night sleep, which was explained to us later in the story by someone. So we went back to the campus, and pretty soon these guys started to show up on the campus with chalkboards, and they would draw the sun and the moon and Reverend Moon and how he figured into the constellations and how he was the divine principle and all this religious mumbo jumbo on a chalkboard. And they came into one of the classrooms one day and started to have a lecture in one of our classrooms, and they were invited in. It was like an exchange student program. And the church, according to us, was divided up into 3 categories. There were the zombies, who were the lower echelon members. We called them the zombies. Then there were the teachers, who wore like white shirts and black ties. And then there were the executives, the guys up above who were in the office. So there were 3 levels of Moonies as far as we could tell at that time. So they sent over one of the zombies to give a lecture in a classroom, and it was packed. Everybody showed up. It was like 150 people sitting on the windowsill, people sitting on the floor. And he goes through this thing with the chalkboard and everything. And people started to interrupt him. The students going, "There's a load of crap. How do you explain this? And what do you say about that? And how come Moon does this? And blah, blah, blah." And the guy starts shaking, goes into a grand mal epileptic seizure, and collapses on the floor. And we're all like, "Yeah, what is this?" And they come and they take him away in a stretcher, Eric. And everybody's like, "What did we just see here?" And the guy just had a complete meltdown from overload of questions is what we gathered. He couldn't handle it. Right.
Wow.
So a week later, a teacher shows up in a white shirt, black tie, gives a perfectly highbrow, erudite lecture on the history of Christianity and how Moon fit into it, handled all questions like a professor, and they were redeemed. They had come in and conquered. So there were all different kinds of people coming and going from there. And there was this guy who had a scholarship, and he was a Puerto Rican from the South Bronx. He was a Congo player, like me, him, and a couple other people had scholarships. So we kind of bonded together. His name was Stephen Pucci. And Stephen Pucci was a drug dealer and a Congo player on the campus. And he said, "Man, I know they got money in there, man. I'm going to go inside and infiltrate behind enemy lines and get the money." I go, "Pucci, are you crazy? What are you, out of your mind?" The guy says, "No, man, I know there's money in there. They got lots of money. They got people. I'm going to go in and make believe I'm with them." I'm going, "Stephen, don't do this, please, right? Don't do this." He disappears from the campus, Stephen Pucci, and he's not seen for months. And everybody's going, "Holy," no, the guy just disappears. And one day on where the Commons was, there's a guy with a chalkboard running a lecture, and it's Stephen Pucci as a zombie. And there he is. He's a complete zombie. And we just go, "Holy shit, they got Pucci." And we go up and we're going, "Stephen, like,"
this sounds like a movie.
No, dude, this is exactly what happened. We go up to him, we're going, Pucci, and he's just a zombie. And he's doing with the chalk, and he's got the chalkboard, and he's drawing the earth and the moon and the sun. And all of a sudden he turns around and he winks at us. And we go, "Holy shit." He just winks and goes back into this phony zombie thing. So anyway, so Pucci disappears, goes back in, but we know he's okay, right? So Reverend Moon somehow wants to buy the property that's adjoining. Here's the Reverend Moon, Sun Young Moon with his crown as the king of all cults, I guess. He was the Howard Stern of cult leaders. So Reverend Moon walked, this is really interesting. He had 8 bodyguards that walked in a 360-degree concentric circle around him all the time. Whatever direction he moved, they moved in a complete circle, and they were trained to move in a circle like this. And he was warned by Leon Botstein, the president of the school, not to come onto the property. And if he came on the property, he would be arrested, which we thought, that's a crazy thing to say. I don't know. Why would you say something like that? However, Reverend Moon apparently wanted to buy this adjoining property, which had a waterfall and a little creek. And he came onto the property with his bodyguards, and he's walking around and he's examining the property, and he gets arrested. And Botstein called the state police. The state police showed up, and in the woods, they arrested Reverend Moon. And oh yeah, this is weird. Oh wow, it actually made the New York Times. It's kind of bizarre, but I guess it was a huge story.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm not making this up. That was 1977. Okay, I thought I dreamt all this shit, but I guess it did happen. What do I know? And anyway, so the word spreads that Moon's been arrested, and he's being arraigned in the courthouse in Red Hook, which is the little town next to the campus. So myself and a bunch of guys go into town and go to the courthouse. And at the courthouse, Moon doesn't show up. What's there is about 15 lawyers and about 20 of the white-shirted teachers. And they go in. Outside is the entire New York media. They somehow drove up in vans or took a plane up immediately. And there was Gabe Pressman from Channel 5 News, or all the top guys were there. And I guess it was a huge story. New York Times was there, so it must have been a big story. So everybody drove up, and his lawyers were inside there saying he is a religious figure and this and that. They were arguing this and that, why he shouldn't be arrested and blah, blah, blah. So it was delayed until a month later or something, or 3 weeks later. There was another hearing coming up. So we come out of the courtroom, and the media is there, and they're interviewing these lawyers for Moon and the teachers who were standing like in the background. And myself and my friends come out, and they started to tell this story, the lawyers, how Moon is a great religious leader, and how dare they arrest him? He's the spiritual guidance of millions of people, and blah, blah, blah. So all of a sudden, I don't know why I did this, I started to blurt out the things I was telling you earlier, about the kid putting his head on the railroad tracks, Eric, and tackling them in the middle of the night, and how we went onto the grounds and we saw this procession of people with sticks burying them in holes. I just started to say all this stuff. And all of a sudden, a circle of teachers surrounds me, about 20 of them, and they start chanting and pointing, going, liar, 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 death to you, death to you. And I go, ah, and they start chanting, death to you, death to you. And I just kept going. And Gabe Pressman, the little guy, one of the most famous newscasters in New York, put the microphone in my face and came up and said, what's your name? I told him my name. I said, I'm a student, and blah, blah, blah. I had some kind of a title. I don't know, assistant student body president or some shit. And the guy said, are these true? And I said, yeah, absolutely. This is what happens over here. I don't know who these people are, but they have a cult at the Christian Brothers Training School, and strange things are happening there. So we go back to Adolph's, the bar on the campus, which has a pump next to it, which didn't have a handle on the pump, of course, Eric, because as Dylan, there's Gabe Pressman. Yeah, he was a weird looking guy. He looks like Marty Feldman now that I think about it. Holy cow, what the fuck? Dude, he was like 5 feet tall. And this guy was a working journalist. I mean, he was everywhere in New York. Any kind of mob rub out or anything. Anyway, so we go back to Adolph's with the pump.
Oh, he looks like an Undertaker, so yeah.
Yeah, he looked like an Undertaker. No. But we go back to Adolph's, which has a pump next to it with no handle, because you can't use the pump because the Vandals took the handle, which is recorded in Subterranean Homesick Blues, because Dylan's future wife, Sarah, went to school there. And that's why Dylan was always showing up at the school. She lived in Tewksbury, and he would visit her at night and get a ticket from a guy named Bobby Jones, who was a security guard. And he wrote the song Ballad of a Thin Man about Bobby Jones coming in and giving him these tickets for having sex with his own girlfriend. And he said, in the lyrics, do you, Mr. Jones? But that's a side digression. It's a side digression. We go into the bar, and on the TV, there's me. And they're pointing, death to you, death to you, death to you. And we're cracking up, and we're drinking, having a good time. And I thought, oh, Jesus, someday they're going to get me. And, I don't know what's going to happen. But we go back to the campus, and, it started to become this incredibly bizarre feud between the school and the Unification Church, because the guy had been arrested. So there was really bad blood. And one day somebody said, there's 5,000 Moonies in Red Hook. And we go, what? And two friends grab cameras, and we go into town, And there's literally, he got them a 1-day visa to come from South Korea to the United States, to this town. And that the town was just, a tiny little town, was just filled with like 5,000 Koreans who were shopping. It was so weird. Some guy took a film of it. I don't know what happened to that film, but the fact of the matter is there was another film made. And this guy, who was a student for his senior thesis, did a documentary with the permission of Reverend Moon, with access. And he sold it to NBC, and he edited the movie to make Moon look like Hitler. So he intercut footage of stormtroopers and the Third Reich and Hitler speaking and Moon speaking. And he just did this hatchet job on Moon, and he sold it to NBC News for $25,000, which was 1970s money. And anyway, so we had a screening in one of the dorm rooms of the show was on. It was on like at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night or something, you know, like this 2020 thing was on for Alec Baldwin the other night. So who shows up? Stephen Pucci. He escapes, and he's in the documentary. In the documentary, Pucci is filmed saying, "Man, I went in to get the money, but I ran and they kept coming after me. I tried to escape. I lowered myself down from a sheet in the rain, and I ran and I ran and I ran." And he's sitting right next to us, and we're all just laughing hysterically because there's Pucci explaining how he never found the money that he was trying to steal from Reverend Moon. And he later escaped and came back and joined us, and was not brainwashed. They didn't get him. I don't know if, you know, Mr. Hughes, Chase could explain that, or Chase could explain how Reverend Moon brainwashed these people, but it looked like sensory deprivation, Eric, you know.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, maybe Pucci was pre-baked.
Right. Pucci was he was unhypnotizable because he came from the South Bronx. But yeah, so I had a girlfriend in high school named Stephanie, and when I got out of Bard, I went back and I asked what happened to her, and she had joined, ironically, she had joined the Unification Church. And I went, "Oh God, that's insane." And she was in a Mooney farm in Vermont and had been kidnapped by deprogrammers who were paid by her family. And they brought her back to New York, and she was never the same after the deprogramming. She had like a flattened affect, spoken of a monotone voice, you know. She was never the same.
Speaking of deprogrammers, we did have a question in the chat about Stephen Hassan. Or Stephen Hassan,
Okay.
who was he's a cult I don't know if he deprograms now, but he's like an anti-cult guy. He was a Moonie in the 70s.
Oh, right. So what's his take on it? I mean,
I don't know. I know he escaped, but the question was if you knew him.
I don't know any of these people. This is just what happened to me. I'm not part of any organized anti-Moon thing. This is just my story of what happened in terms of being there at the beginning of this thing. Now, again, like I said to you yesterday, this is just the beginning of the Moon thing, because he was the biggest arms manufacturer in South Korea, and he backs Nixon to the hilt and begins to work with.
Was he a manufacturer or dealer?
Both. No, he had factories in South Korea. No, that's where he made his millions. That's where he made his millions of dollars. He was born in South Korea, raised in Japan. He was imprisoned by he was born in North Korea, actually. Then he emigrated to Japan, came back, and during the Korean War, and was imprisoned and tortured by the communists in North Korea, and escaped during the Korean War. So I guess it was in 1948, 1950, he was imprisoned, but he escaped and was a virulent anti-communist and became a backer of Nixon. And in fact, when Nixon was being impeached, he had these huge rallies for Nixon at Madison Square Garden and Yankee Stadium with 50,000 people in America. You know, I mean, the guy really, here he is. Look at him with the white gloves. This is, I don't know which wife that is.
This might have been a wedding that he did.
This is later. But in the 80s, this is another oddity of Moon. He produces a movie called Incheon, a war picture about the battle in the Korean War. And he gets Laurence Olivier. There it is. Yeah. He gets Laurence Olivier to play Douglas MacArthur. And Laurence Olivier demanded that he be paid in in suitcases of money, which he did. He put in $42 million into this movie, Moon. This is a self-produced movie by Reverend Moon, and it has I think it has 0% on Rotten Tomatoes to this day. It is considered the worst war picture ever made, and it's got a lot of stars in it. It's got Ben Gazzara, and it's got what's her name up there, Jacqueline Bisset, I think. It's got a lot of stars. It's just an incredibly bad movie about the Korean War, but also a guy playing General Alexander Haig, who was a lieutenant at that time. But the same year, 1981, I think, he was subject to a 12-count indictment, Moon, by the federal government, and he's indicted on tax fraud and accepting bribes. And what happened was the Korean CIA was using Moon to bribe American congressmen to do the bidding of South Korea, not unlike what the communist Chinese are doing today with the Democratic Party. And Reverend Moon was indicted and convicted and served 18 months in federal prison. I mean, it's just an incredible story. And he does kitchen duty, Eric, which you are familiar with.
Was it related to this?
No, that's later.
Jeez.
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
No. That's later.
Congress,
brother.
Not Senate. Okay.
No. This is 1981, 12-count indictment, 18 months. And he does 82 becomes the movie. He gets out after the 18 months, has the rallies for Nixon and when he was being impeached, and publishes The Divine Principle. So in I want to say in the early 90s, I think is when he starts marrying people, right? Is that what that was from? That 82, yeah. 82, right. Yeah, if you could show that marriage thing. He marries 2,075 couples in Madison Square Garden simultaneously. Yeah, that's what this is from. He marries 2,000 couples. They don't know each other. They filled out questionnaires. He looked at their photos and marries them. And then they don't even get to consummate the marriage, Eric. They are sent off around the world to do church work around the world. And
missionaries.
As missionaries, right, for the church. So they don't even get to consummate. Every single one of the men was wearing the same exact blue suit that he bought wholesale in Korea. And then the women are wearing satin and lace gowns. I don't know if you have a photo of the weddings at all.
I don't have that.
Okay. All right.
The thumbnail, though, has a background of it.
Okay.
All those dots.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the time.
Actually, here it is. Sorry. I
thought you might have
pulled up right there.
Oh, those are the people. Okay.
Yeah. That's not just a pattern background. That's the people. It was a man.
He married. Right. So they don't get to consummate the marriage. They get sent off places. They don't know each other. These are 2000. There since was made a documentary from what I didn't see the documentary, but there was one made in 2010 by a couple of the people who were married. I briefly looked at it. I haven't seen the whole thing, but it's a lot of Moonies in the documentary, and they're sent off to different places around the world.
I have
Is there a trailer from that documentary or something? Or
yeah, I have one.
My marriage was arranged by a man named Reverend Moon.
There we go.
Who is the founder of the Unification Church, a group otherwise known as the Moonies.
This must be the second coming of Christ.
God's hope for America.
Everybody knew about Moonies and how they brainwashed.
You don't really realize you're getting brainwashed at the time.
If you looked at it from the surface, we had a nice life.
We were the perfect family.
I felt like they were choosing the church over me.
I always knew
Anyway, you get the idea.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll tell you something interesting. They used to have women on the West Side Highway in New York selling flowers. And because we figured out the code that broke them was to ask them the same question repeatedly, that's what made them go into a catatonic seizure. So we would pull up alongside we're on the West Side Highway for whatever reason. And there would be these women selling roses, and they were Moonies. And everybody knew not everybody, but we knew they were Moonies. So we would just go, money for father, money for father, money for father, money for father. And they go, and they collapse with the flowers and we drive off. I know it sounds harsh, but we got off on it. I don't know.
You were young and not polite.
We were young, and it sounds bad, but well, look, they were in a cult, and they were trying to rip us off, for money, and we didn't want the money to go to Reverend Moon, so we just said money for father, and that was enough to trigger them. They were not supposed to say money for father. That was some internal code that they had. These people were completely brainwashed. This was not like
your drug dealer taught you that one. Poochie said, "Hey, check it out."
Oh yeah, we learned a lot from Poochie. We learned, there was money in there, and Poochie couldn't crack the safe. I mean, I don't know where he is today, but Stephen Poochie was a totally hip guy, and he almost got to the money. But Eric, the guy's name I think was Michael Schwartz. I recently wrote to Bard a month ago to find out the guy's name, and they didn't have any record of it. But their records only went back to like 76 or 77 or something in the film department. So I thought his name was Michael Schwartz. I'm not sure anymore, but he did sell that senior thesis project to NBC News because we all watched it together in the dorm. That being said, we were wary of the Moonies and then went back to New York. And what Reverend Moon did in New York was he bought the New Yorker Hotel. And as you pointed out, he bought the Washington Times, and he started to work with the Bush family. He was, conservative. He was an anti-communist conservative and a Republican. So he worked closely with the Nixon people and then the Bush people when they came into power. And that's where he starts coming up back into the media, Washington Times era again. And I think he had what?
You mentioned the Washington Times. I'm only going to point this out because there's a parallel. There's a new organization called called Falun Gong.
Right.
And they own Epoch Times.
Right. That is kind of weird.
Just like there's this little pattern there.
Well, maybe they learned it from Reverend Moon. I don't know.
Well, it's Chinese and it's Korean.
Yeah, the Washington Times was denounced as being Reverend Moon's paper, but he also later bought UPI, United Press International. So, I mean, and he owned papers around the world. This wasn't a one-shot deal with Moon. He owned a number of newspapers all over the world and hired legitimate. I remember he hired some mainstream editor who was famous, like from the Washington Post, to give it legitimacy, or the New York Times. He hired some mainstream guy, and it was a real controversy at the time. He just paid the guy a fortune to be the editor of the Washington Times, whoever the first editor was. That was the guy who was the named guy to put it on the map. And it was a conservative version of the Washington Post, which I think it still is, right, Eric? Or is it still around? Or is that the Washington Examiner now?
No, Times is still around, I think.
Okay. Well,
they're the counter to the Post.
Right, exactly. Well, that's what it was then. So anyway, so he does this. He buys the New Yorker Hotel. He, begins to set up a base in New York. And that's where things get weird. That's where things get a little strange. Because he gets out of jail and, the 90s come and go, and he begins to denounce the United States now. He turns on us as being this liberal Satan, homosexual empire, and starts saying bad things about us. So in the middle of
your school was a little bit
no, this is 25 years later. He turns against the United States in the early 2000s. No. He denounces us in like 2002 and says that we're a satanic empire. Here he is again. He's obviously he's got nice lapels and flowers and stuff like that. But the reality of it is, this is the strangest one of all. I don't even know. Nobody really has an explanation for this. I think it's like in 2004, in the middle of the night. James Whelan. That's right. Thank you, Zorbo. Very, very prominent editor at the time. So in the middle of the night, in the Everett Dirksen building in the Rotunda, they have a ceremony at midnight where a bunch of congressmen come in with a crown on a pillow, and Moon and his wife in the United States Congress are sitting on a throne. And these congressmen put the crown on his head and name him King of the World.
And now I can get to my
yes. Now,
well,
here we go. King of America at U.S. Senate building. But I think it was King of the World. Reverend Moon crowned
No
king
pictures.
of America. Maybe it was. Yeah. There's no
Interesting.
photos. Right. But it was pretty widely reported. And there was bipartisan. There was a Denny Dillon. What was the guy's name? Denny something from Illinois, Eric. And there was a couple of Harold. No. How about Harold Ford? Hold on. If you could blow that up a little bit, it lists Harold Ford, the Democrat from Tennessee.
Mark Dayton.
Danny Davis, Democrat from Illinois. Kurt Weldon is a Republican from Pennsylvania. Sanford Bishop, Democrat.
Look at
from
that.
Georgia.
It's bipartisan whack job.
Bipartisan. Pressler from South Dakota. It's just the creepiest thing ever in the history of the United States. This ceremony went on in the middle of the night, and everybody said they didn't know anything about it.
That is crazy. And hold on, I think I found something.
What?
Hold on, it's not big, but
that's it. I think that's it. Is that it? Dude, I think you got it. Oh, that's definitely it.
Anyway, it's very, very hard to see.
Crown Messiah in Washington, D.C. Yep.
But you can see that it's definitely the rotunda looking.
Right. Look, there's other religious leaders there, though.
Yeah.
There's like a mullah and a couple other cats.
Oh, no surprise.
It's like Religions Incorporated, as Lenny Bruce said. They're all there.
Yeah.
So anyway, down that red carpet came one of the congressmen, I think it was Denny Dillon, with a pillow with that crown, walking slowly and then putting the crown onto Reverend Moon's head, which is, of course, what congressmen are supposed to do. The situation just got worse after that because he was involved in funneling money to various candidates. I think Republican, because the Chinese had a guy who was funneling money to Bill Clinton, who was arrested and went to jail, the Chinese communists. So this was, I think, the South Korean version of what the Chinese communists were doing to the Democratic Party. This was the alternative, who were a Republican anti-communist in South Korea.
Hey, Eva's got a good point about all those religious figures. Maybe that's part of the unification in the church.
He wanted to be the Messiah of the world. He wrote a book called The Divine Principle and said that he was king of the world at one point, and that it got more messianic as time went on. Into the 2000s, he became a megalomaniac. But early on when he wrote, I remember reading the time, they gave us the book, The Divine Principle, and it was thoroughly Christian based. It wasn't really crazy or anything, but a bunch of writers kept rewriting it. And it evolved as a book for him, as his Bible, The Divine Principle.
Yeah, but hey, write your own book, create a religion around it. Why not? L. Ron
Right.
Hubbard can. He can.
Right. I mean, the closest thing would be Hubbard, I guess, in Scientology. But this thing had some different tentacles to it because, well, I mean, even Scientology probably got involved in politics at some point with different politicians doing favors for them, But I mean, at least these guys had a church you could go to, and they had like a Christian-based operation. There's no Scientology hospital. There's no Scientology church. I mean, these guys were a legitimate religion, and Moon was I mean, they were all over the world. They're
closer to like Mormon size.
Yeah, they were closer to Mormons, but I mean, Moon
not in faith, but in size is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, there's some debate as to the actual size of them because he said he had millions of followers, and then our intelligence people said it was 50,000 in the United States. I mean, it really, the gap was really enormous as to how big of a church it was. But he started to, as he got older, he had a lot of kids, and of course, starting to do rumors. One of his kids wrote a book that he was into cocaine and different sexual deviant behavior. And I just got really sad because I thought Moon was better than that. I just had high hopes.
You had standards.
No, but I was just hoping he was just a straight up cult leader and didn't fall into the obvious, Reverend Jim Jones crazy crap that cult leaders fall into when you get. How would I know? I mean, unless you could walk in their shoes, who knows what you would do? You'd probably do the same thing, Hunley.
Until you get that much power,
right? I don't know
within your grasp.
Right.
God only knows. I mean, you tend to get a little bit crazy.
Well, I mean, Moon, like I said, when we were at the school, we had never heard of any of this stuff. So it was really the first cult I was ever exposed to. Years later in New York, I think it's in the 80s, I had a girlfriend who joined the Forum, which was a spinoff of Werner Erhardt's Est. And they were calling my house, asking for money all the time. And finally, I went down to the Penta Hotel, which used to be the New Yorker. And they had a big open forum there of trying to join new members. And a woman was speaking, and I was there trying to get my girlfriend out of it. And on the break, the people on either side of me asked me if I wanted to join. They were going to join, Eric, that it was great. And I realized they were plants right away. So when the group came back in, there was a room full of 500 people. I stood up and I said, why are these two plants sitting next to me trying to convince me? And another guy stands up and goes, yeah, why are these two people? And another guy stands up and goes, yeah, I got two people too. And chaos breaks out in this in this forum thing. And it turns out that the Cult Awareness Network, which was in New York, I had to go to them to try to get my girlfriend. I was freaking out. I was really freaking out. She was like a zombie. And I went to the Cult Awareness Network, and there was a bunch of young Orthodox Jewish kids answering phones, and they were experts on cults. And I said, what's the deal with the Forum? And I went over there. They were in Midtown Manhattan. And they said, well, it's a spinoff of Est. It was Werner Erhardt. There's mind control involved. There's sensory deprivation. You can't go to the bathroom. There's no food. And I go, yeah, that's what they were doing. That's what my girlfriend's like. And he says, yeah, we're working with people all the time, right? So they, years later, this is interesting, got sued by Scientology, and they just buried them with lawyers. They didn't have any lawyers, the Cult Awareness Network. They were just volunteers. So Scientology, as part of the lawsuit, got to take over their office, their files, and their phones, and put in staffers of Scientologists who answered the phone and said, hello, Cult Awareness Network. And it was Scientology.
Oh, my.
And they answered any question about cults you might have, unless you asked about Scientology. Then they, told you how great it was. And that was the creepiest thing I've ever heard, was Scientology taking over the Cult Awareness Network.
This wasn't the girlfriend.
No, this was on the left. Oh, God. That was Denise Durling on the left. She was my girlfriend at the time at Bard, and her parents owned Durling Farms that supplied all the milk to New York State. She lived in Jersey. And I remember driving to her parents' house with her, and we had to drive for miles to get to the actual house on her property. Durling Milk. She was the heir to the Durling milk fortune, Denise Durling. That was like my college girlfriend, but she was involved in this hijinks also. I'm not to blame her. I mean, she was great,
Okay, so all this insanity, and I know you had an experience yourself with Scientology, and maybe you'll go into sometime, but
I had a Scientology girlfriend too. Well, that'll be later. We'll get into it. Dude, all my girlfriends were in cults. It's really strange. They go to me.
The cult of Mark.
They with me, and they join a cult, or they're in a cult, and I try to get them out. It's one or the other. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark, or they get tired of me and join a cult. I had quite a few of these experiences.
So whatever happened with Moon? He just got old, died?
There was some injury in a helicopter crash. They didn't get killed, but they were severely injured in a helicopter crash in some bad weather. And he basically did not have a successor. They still exist today, but on a much smaller scale than what they did before. I mean, it literally was a cult of personality, with Moon himself being the main guy. And he never really did anything crazy himself. But I always liked that idea of having, a concentric circle of bodyguards walking around you all the time. Wherever you went, you just had this circle of guys around you moving at the same time. I was always got a kick out of that. But
weird.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was just a strange time in the 70s where there was a new cult every week. This was back east in California. I wasn't there, but I would then learn, later on about the Hale Bob Comet people in San Diego and some of the cults in California, obviously the Manson cult and some others. But
Heaven's
was
Gate and
Heaven's Gate. But in back east, they had the Rajneesh who wore orange robes who were based in Oregon, but they did have an operation in Woodstock, New York, where I later lived after I got out of Bard, which was across the river where Dylan lived, and it became a whole music scene after in the 70s and 80s. But the Rajneesh were there, and they were another strange sex cult where they had like a long bearded guru, the Rajneesh, who of course had sex with everyone. And
well, it's good to be a
it's good to be the king. Not to say I wouldn't do the same thing, but to wear an orange robe, that's no big deal. I could wear an orange robe, But I think there's a type of person that joins a cult, Eric. You know what I mean? I don't think you and I are the type. There's a certain type that joins.
There are. I've actually had cult experts on my other show talking about it, and believe it or not, do-gooders are very often the ones who get caught up in it. People who want to have a cause, they want to believe in something, and and so because people think, oh, I'm too smart for that. It's like, oh, hell no. Some of the smartest people get caught up in it. It's people who are in a transition point and they want their life to have meaning. They're the ones who get targeted every time. A cynical bastard drug dealer might not care enough to get caught up in it.
It would have cut into my lifestyle to be in a cult. But
no, I was talking about your friend. But
Stephen Pucci.
Yourself.
But I was just like I was the white version of Stephen Pucci, so it didn't really matter. That's why we hung out together. But I guess Pucci was pre-baked, like you said. They couldn't convince him, but boy, he put on some act with that chalkboard on the campus that day. We were completely spooked until he winked at us, Eric, and then we realized that he was the regular guy, and then we said, "Holy shit!" Because he disappeared a long time.
Well played, by the way.
Well played. I had to tip my hat to Pooch. I mean, if you're out there today, Stephen, hope you see this show because that was well played, my friend. Well played.
Oh hell yeah! So. Onward, what do we have as our next show? Are we doing something with Baldwin possibly on
Friday we'll do a Baldwin. It's a traditional Friday Baldwin. It goes back all the way to the Revolutionary War, right? To do Fridays.
Apparently he fired the first shot, and so we have to keep covering
Fridays with Baldwin. That should be the name of the show, right? We should just do a Friday, TGIB. Thank God it's Baldwin, on Fridays, right?
Yeah.
We've already uncovered new stuff, didn't we, Eric?
Oh, we have new stuff and even more new stuff. I've got another bottle that came in. I'll have to show you later that I haven't told you about.
Oh my!
So
wow,
that's it's very specific bottle.
Right. I uncovered some stuff out of New Mexico, also some political angles to the story, which are big dots that maybe someday will be connected in the afterlife. I don't know. We have to do is get a dot connector. Some guy who's just a professional dot connector, doesn't make dots. He just connects dots.
They're in the audience. That's what the comments are for.
That's what the comments are for. You know what? Let me tell you something. There's some fascinating people in that comment section.
Oh, hell yeah.
Unbelievable. I could read them all day. I mean, those guys are brilliant.
And we do read the comments, by the way. We may not be able to answer them all, but we do read them.
Right.
And deeply appreciate them.
Appreciate the PayPal for the book fund. That was great. I'm at Lord Buckley. If you want to join me on Twitter, LORDBUCKLY. We're going to do an episode on Lord Buckley, the comedian, at some point, Eric, I guess, when I get home.
Yeah, we're going to do Buckley.
Lenny, we're going to do Salk, right? Jonas Salk versus Saban.
Yep, we're doing that. The America's Games is coming up soon.
America's Street Games,
Street Games.
That's for the children. That's for your kids. That's going to be a totally G-rated show for the children for Christmas Day or the closest day, right?
Right. Next week's the Strangeloves, I think.
Oh, the Strangeloves, the band.
Yeah. We're not going to go any deeper, but
no, I can't say anything. I can't say anything.
Story.
Any revelation about this story would give the story away. So
by the way, we
don't even name the band. Don't even say the name. Don't say anything. It's about a band.
It's a band.
It's a band.
It's an amazing band. It's a crazy band. Well,
it's a crazy band. And wait, you could find extra stuff on Locals, right, Eric?
Yes, you can go to Locals. I wanted to let everybody know, not only PayPal, I did get a Venmo. People were asking, hey, do you have Venmo? Yes, I opened a Venmo. We have merch.
We have merch. We do.
Isn't that an amazing design?
That's
everybody wants to check it out.
What about the cup?
The cup, I haven't decided what we're going to do on the cup yet.
Okay.
Because I think it'd be cool if everybody could get a cup, but there's a giant pain in the ass factor of getting 100 cups in our house and having to ship them out and calculate everything.
You mean Leslie is not happy about it?
No, I mean actually getting the time to the post office to go ship them
Oh,
out.
I see. All right,
There's some overhead. So I can almost drop ship to Mark, and Mark will be putting.
Oh, I saw trying to pass it over to me. Well,
So I don't know what's going to happen. I'd like to
We'll
find
figure it out. We should
like
get
the
cups,
shirts. We got the shirts, and you get coffee cup and all that.
Right. I mailed you
that's all
something the other
dropship.
day, bro. You should get it pretty soon. Something I made, some little gift.
Oh,
Keep your eyes
fantastic.
open. Yeah, you might enjoy it.
Fantastic. Well,
So okay. So you can join. You're saying you could join locals
you can join locals
for
follow us
secret
for
extra
free.
stuff, right? For secret.
Right, you can follow us for free. If you're
Right.
supporting, we'll be putting more stuff out there that is exclusive for people behind the paywall. But going
behind the
there still
paywall
helps.
sounds like you're behind the Berlin Wall. Behind
Well, it can't be.
what goes on behind the paywall?
Madness. Pure.
There's
pure
extra
madness.
videos. There's X-rated material. Is there really like?
Well, I'm going to hold off on the X-rated material.
no, but I mean, language-wise, is it different than
Well, we
here?
could-
I mean,
we can be more open on locals, is
Okay,
whatever
all
we're
right,
saying.
all right.
So
now,
that's
what
always
about
a
how
good
do you
one.
subscribe? What do? You push a button or something?
Yeah,
What's the deal?
there's a red button underneath
Where?
this.
Where
You
is
hit
it?
subscribe.
Where is it? Over here?
I think it's it's under your finger.
Okay,
from
so
your-
you told me we've now got 10,000 subscribers. in
We
the
do.
span of- how
Oh,
is
so
that
guess what?
humanly- What?
So now we're committed
To what?
because we said if we did 10,000 that we'll do a Q&A session or an Ask Me Anything type of show.
Right.
So unless something happens, end of the year, we'll do an Ask Me Anything show sometime the last week of this year. Just literally do a show and people can ask
They ask
whatever.
anything.
I
Okay.
may not have an answer, but
Oh, you don't
ask
have
a
to have an
question.
answer, but it's a question. It's not a Q&A. It's just a Q.
well,
just a-
we'll,
it's a
we'll
Q-
try to answer. We'll selectively answer. I mean, I never know if I get arrested if you're answering. I mean,
Well, I haven't seen the questions. They're not pre-submitted, are they?
No, it's on the chat. We're
It's
just
in
be
real
here.
time. Right.
Yeah,
There's
real
no
time.
it's
Have
not
fun
like
with it.
Donna Brazil with the debates where she had the questions from CNN and gave them to the candidates, right? This is
I don't know. Maybe we can rig some. I might get something rigged ahead of time. Maybe I have some questions. Maybe
that might be interesting.
you speaking of plants, maybe I can plant some questions in the audience.
Okay.
Be a fun one.
Okay.
But for now,
Well,
next
For
up,
now, what next up
Baldwin
is what?
on Friday.
Oh, Baldwin on Friday. Okay, so we have to prepare for that, and just to come up with the new stuff, which isn't so difficult. I mean, this is better than the Zapruder film, and I'm so glad he brought up the Zapruder film because it's now connecting 3 million dots in a circle with this guy. I mean, everybody's saying, why did he bring up the Zapruder film? I have no idea, but many people have wondered, about the actual line of fire of the bullet going through her and into the shoulder of the director.
All right. Save this question for the end of the year, Eva.
John Travolta. The answer, of course, is John Travolta.
On that note, thank you, everyone. See you.
Thank you.
Friday.
Bye.